Hi, I'm Bob Vila. Welcome home again to the restoration of the Virginia Governor's Mansion. Today we're reinstalling one of our antique fireplace mantels, and we'll take you to the shop where some of the restoration work on it has been done. Also, we'll get together with our architect and our general contractor to tour the grounds and get an idea of where the project stands. Also, a visit to Colonial Williamsburg, where we'll get together with some gentlemen who practice some 18th century carpentry techniques. Stick around, it's great to have you home again.
Sears presents Bob Vila's Home Again.
Well, we've only got a couple of weeks to go before the first family moves in, right? And here's the ballroom, quite a transformation. The paint job is real nice, John Paul. What do you call this color?
Well, it's a gray that we matched to work with the draperies and work with the border that goes around this room.
All right, so there are details yet to come
Yes.
that will bring real life into the room. But
Absolutely.
gray and white as a background is a very smart place to go.
Thank you.
Yeah. The chandeliers are back.
Yes, they've been completely rewired. They've been cleaned, polished. All the crystals have been polished, and the proportion's been changed slightly to make it a little more graceful in the room.
So that it's not as close as it was.
Right.
Well, I'm glad to
graceful.
see the plastic is still on it, because there's a lot
Well,
of dust in here.
the floor is going to be refinished, and we just couldn't afford that.
How many coats of paint are on these walls?
One coat of primer and 2 coats of finished paint.
Okay, so and have they been spraying it?
Well, just because of time, the constraints of time,
Yeah.
we sprayed the first coat, the rest are being brushed.
Okay. And then this, when I was here last, we were just looking at it as a brand new opening that was being created, and now it's looking pretty complete.
Well, then too, that's going to be draped with the curtains that hang in here, so it'll just look like you're going through portieres.
Exactly. Well, Sam and I were here just a few days ago, it seems,
right.
doing a little progress report. Now, this is the ballroom here at the Executive Mansion, and we've got Sam Daniel, who's the project manager. And what's happening in this space? This looks like it's the staging area right now for all the carpenters, right?
Yes, that's correct. We have all of the wood material here for the entire building. The upstairs area is not large enough to have this rack, so we're storing it all here.
But all of this poplar that's been milled is primarily for the new construction of the private quarters, right?
That's right.
We're trying to save all the historic fabric of the house.
That's right. The only new material here is the new base material.
The baseboards, and I know some panels have to be
Some
replaced.
panels have been replaced because of rotting.
And what about these grand pocket doors? What's happening here?
Well, on the other side, we're doing a patch.
Well, the patching has to do with probably where it wore against the hardware when it was coming in and out.
That's right.
And what's the material you used for that
It's
patch?
an epoxy resin.
Just an epoxy resin.
Right.
So this will all be
It's going to be
repainted.
painted just as it is now.
Yeah, so that's why you've had to pull it all the way out. And is there some aspect of this that it's tied into the HVAC system?
Yes, when the doors are fully open, the opening where the door passes is used as a return air grill.
So that gap that's about 3 inches, that space is connected with the ductwork.
It's connected with the HVAC system. As the air supplies in this area, it is returned here. It goes back to the unit and it gets reconditioned and is put back into the room.
Because it's a closed system.
It's a closed system.
Yeah.
And this method of returning caused us to not have an ugly grill that we would have to then conceal or find a way to be unobtrusive.
Sure, sure. Now, the elevators over there, are you making a lot of progress with that?
Lots happened on that since you saw it last.
Now, in this end of the ballroom, this was originally a window, right?
Yes, this was a window. It's now been made an opening so we can get to the north addition.
And what have they done to the panels here?
Well, in some of the windows we've had some rotting and the panels had to be replaced. Those that could have been repaired were repaired. This one was in such bad shape we had to replace it. This is a piece of MDO material. The pencil line indicates the outline of the applied moldings that will go.
Which will match what's up above.
It'll replicate what's above.
Yes. Okay, so now this is a passageway, and this is essentially the elevator lobby, right?
That's right. We have the elevator lobby here, and then this is the opening to the elevator shaft. At this time, they're stringing the cables onto the shivs. It's a traction elevator. It's pulled up by the cabling.
Most elevators have the cabling way up on top in a head house.
That's right. In this case, we couldn't do that because in order to maintain the lines of the building, the proper roof line, we had to put all of the mechanism at the bottom of the elevator. This is called a basement-mounted traction elevator. And
So the pulleys and the cables and the works are all
they're
below
all
the cab.
They're all at the bottom. You can see the machine down here, and the shivs are here, or the pulleys that with the cabling that pulls the elevator up.
Okay. Now, what kind of technology is this?
This is a state-of-the-art traction elevator.
What's it cost to put an elevator in like this?
This particular elevator, because of many constraints that we had to work with, had to do with size and so forth, is $150,000.
Yeah, well, it's part of the historic preservation
That's
aspect
right.
of the game.
And a very important aspect of it.
Yeah.
Let's take a look in here.
Let's take a peek in the dining room. Okay, now this oval dining room is part of the 1906 addition.
Yes, that's right, built in 1906.
What's the scope of work in here?
Well, other than new electrical and mechanical, we're skim coating the ceiling to cover up all the cracks that have happened over the years through the sagging of the ceiling.
Okay.
And a coat of paint, some new trim.
Speaking of paint, I mean, there's a lot of paint on the woodwork in here. It's like every governor added a different color.
That's about right. Once every 4 years, you can count on a new coat of paint in here.
So that could be about 20 coats.
That's right.
And here you had to remove all the paneling, the surrounding paneling from this window. What was the problem here?
Water transfer that has come in around the window has rotted the panel. You can see we're now patching the masonry here to help take care of that problem.
And then this will be insulated before you rebuild it?
That's right.
Now, is this the panel that you're saying was damaged?
Yes, this is the panel that came out. You can see the bad condition that it's in.
Yeah.
And so we're replacing it with this new insert in the same old framework. This is a piece of MDO plywood. That's medium density overlay.
Right.
And then the applied moldings will be applied to this, and
Right.
it will look just like it used to.
So wherever possible, you retain the original fabric of the room.
Exactly.
Where it's impossible, we use new products.
That's right.
So, Sam, just weeks away from finishing, right?
Yes, about 6 is all we've got left.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Okay, John Paul, here in the old governor's office, I know that we've done some restoration. This is an original overdoor treatment.
Right.
And these doors had been buried and hidden, so these are restored
To match the
decorations
original.
to match that one.
Right.
And here, of course, is our mantelpiece. And it has not necessarily been restored, it's been conserved, right?
And the conservation technique was to keep it, all the material that we had missing, sort of replacing some missing elements, but basically leaving intact the original imprints.
Yeah, so it's conserved more or less in the condition that we
Exactly.
that we have it without adding pieces to it, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, it looks beautiful.
Greg's done a beautiful, beautiful job on it. He really has. Very, very nice.
Next, we'll have more about the mantel restoration with Bob Ryley at the Tidewater Preservation Workshop. Now let's get together with Bob Ryley and Greg Cowan at the Tidewater Preservation Workshop in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and take a look at the detailed process of conserving the mantels from the governor's mansion.
That's a pretty interesting technique of stripping paint, Greg. What was it you just did?
Well, I've just vacuumed off a methylene chloride-based stripper that I've been using on this heavily overpainted ornament here on the mantel.
It sure is heavy. That's, I'll give you that.
It's a commonly available stripper. You can get it at the paint store or the hardware store.
Uh-huh. Well, actually, this mantle here is mostly all stripped. Now, is that the process you use for the whole thing?
No, actually on most of the flat surfaces, the profiles, these columns,
Yeah.
I used a heat gun
Okay.
and various profile scrapers, such as this one or these two.
Yeah.
This one works very well in these fluted columns.
Right.
By moving it back and forth, you can get into the profile quite nicely.
So just use that with a heat gun.
Right.
And what's this? What would this one here be used
This
for?
is excellent for very tight corners. And here you see I'm running along the grain of this profile.
Okay.
But I am not scraping against the grain of
Right.
this flat surface here.
Yeah, very
This
nice.
one also works very nicely against flat surfaces, where you've got a rounded surface next to it, of which there are quite a few actually on this
Yes.
mantel, on all three of these mantels.
And that's the process. Now, did you do the same thing up here on these musical-looking motifs here?
Right. These lyres have had several applications, probably as many as 6 or 7 applications of stripper. And as you saw, I used the scraper while
Okay.
the stripper is on there to get down into the profiles. And then ultimately, without a stripper on there, I will dry scrape as well. And you can see I'm getting the last little residues of white
Right.
out from between each of these individual strings, which are fairly delicate.
So no heat gun on these details here.
Correct. This ornament cannot withstand high temperature. and so-
Why is that?
Well, because of its composition. They are made of, among other things, hide glue which is made from animal hides.
Really? Okay, yeah.
Hide glue, linseed oil, sawdust.
This is how they were originally made. They put them in a mold, took them out
Correct.
and attached them.
That's correct.
And I understand we've got one over here that we're
Right,
still
over
working on?
here I have an entire mantel basically fully stripped, and in fact
Okay.
I'm now repairing ornaments.
So this looks pretty much like the one we just left.
It is very similar in construction. The only difference is the motif in the frieze area here, where we had lyres and other musical motif there. We have here
Little dolphins there.
we've got dolphins and other seafaring emblems. We also
Okay.
have a Masonic symbol here in the center of these two panels.
Okay, now we've seen how they've been applied before in past jobs, but I understand you're not doing the composition here. You're doing something different.
That's right. What I'm doing is completely different in appearance. I'm using plaster of Paris mixed with a bonding agent, which I'm adding right now to some cold water. Here's my bonding agent. I'll be using this as an admixture, to which I then add plaster of Paris, mixing that to about the consistency of toothpaste. I always add the powder to the liquid, mix it fairly slowly, but with plaster of Paris, as you know,
It sets
you
up
don't,
fast.
you don't have a lot of working time. So Ryley, I'm using a 1-to-1 ratio here between water and the bonding agent in my plaster of Paris mix. Okay, now I'm applying the bonding agent right to the surface of the mantel. I'm also putting some on both ends of this area I'm going to repair so that it also adheres to the original composition ornament. Well, I can see that the bonding agent is ready now, and so is the plaster, so I'm going to put on these magnifying glasses. And
Helps you see that everything a little better.
absolutely, and I'm going to lay on a very rough initial application of the plaster in the
that's
location that we're going to be repairing.
It's almost like miniature trowel work.
It's exactly what it is. Just want to be sure I have enough in place so that I can come back in a while and smooth it out.
Greg, why not use some of the materials that are out now for as wood fillers to do this work, as opposed to plaster of Paris?
Well, it's a preservation philosophy that we don't want to fool or trick or confuse any future conservators should they come along and want to strip and trace the history of this mantel.
They want to see that this is a repair. They don't want to be confused.
Correct. These are going to be very obviously repairs out of a completely different material.
And I've got to ask you, what are all these red tapes for?
Those indicate locations where I've got work cut out for me.
Looks
There's
like you've got
missing
a lot.
ornament. There are missing ornaments in about 30 locations.
Yeah.
Some are very simple, some are rather more complicated. We have a flower down there that I've already done some work on. Others are very simple, where there are just big blisters that simply need to be filled in and smoothed out.
Now, do you have any special tools for the actual carving?
Well, I've been using anything that works, really, but specifically I've got some very small hobby knives.
Okay. Can we see how you use
which
those?
work well? Yeah, I've got some here, a couple of pieces that I laid up earlier today. I can come back now and shape these using the X-Acto knife. Really works well at this stage. I also have dental picks I use. The very nice thing about the bonding agent I use is it makes the plaster of Paris workable for a much longer period of time than regular straight plaster of Paris.
Very nice. Well, I can see there's a real art form to this type of restoration work.
That's right, Ryley. It's a lot of fun doing it. It's important to remember, though, what we do. We want it to be discernible and reversible.
That's interesting.
When we come back, the restored mantel is returned to its original location in the Virginia Governor's Mansion. Well, when originally built, this mantel was face-nailed onto the wall, and now that we're reattaching it, we're just using a large mending strap, as you can see here, that they've attached onto these blocks. And that comes straight over to the masonry brick of the chimney, some lead shields there, which will hold it in place, so that keeps any new fasteners from going into it. And if it ever has to be removed and worked on again, it can be done so very, very easily. Well, going from the heating technology of the early 1800s back by about 50 or 60 years, recently we learned that there's a new house being built that replicates the technology of the 1750s out in Colonial Williamsburg. Garland Wood and I are going to hook up and show you some of those ideas, including a mantelpiece. Okay, but now here in Colonial Williamsburg, you're looking at kind of an earlier, by 50 or 60 years, technology for making chimney pieces and mantels and fireplaces. This is quite an elaborate chimney piece. There's a lot of masonry to talk about, but Garland Wood, who's the kind of the builder here at Williamsburg, the head carpenter. Hey, Garland.
Nice to see you.
This is a very interesting project in that it has archaeological roots, right? There once was a big chimney here, etc.
We started working on this building years before we ever, laid our hands on a piece of wood.
Is that right?
About 15 years ago, the archaeologists at Colonial Williamsburg uncovered what looks like a cellar and foundations in very good shape.
So all the brick courses that are moss-covered and darkened are original 18th century
That's right.
ruins.
Late about 1755.
Is that right?
And we determined they were in such good shape that we could just build right on top of them.
Yeah. And so this vault, as it were, was really a cellar, right?
Yes, it may well have been a wine cellar. And there's an original stair at the outside of the building that leads underground into that cellar.
Okay.
And of course we have to relieve these joists to go across the vault.
Which is what Kevin's doing right now with an adze.
Yes, indeed.
And he's just taking off enough of the timber so that when it lies down over the barrel vault, it'll fit snugly. Typical of 18th century carpentry and joinery, they've got a wonderful, huge piece of timber here, and then they chop away, they notch better than half of it, so that
Yes.
when you knock this over and put it down there, really it becomes more like a 4-inch joist rather than an 8. Kevin, are you ready to move this over? You ready to flip it?
Yeah. Let's put it in. Watch your fingers. There you go.
Is there something stuck underneath it? Thank you. That's nice. Now this will be a basic timber frame, right? I was just looking at the corner over here,
Exactly.
which already shows the second floor and the sway braces in the corners,
We actually spent the last year making all of this material.
making all the material and letting it dry out and get ready. Now, so much care went into the frame of these structures. What about the interior? Because this was an ancillary building. It wasn't a mansion.
Yes, but it's close to the house, and so it's going to have a higher degree of finish than many of the other outbuildings.
And what about interior finishes?
Inside will be fairly plain. We'll be plastered, but we will have crown molding, we'll have window sash, we'll have panel doors.
Can you show us the kind of moldings and the kind of tools that
I've
we
got
used?
something I think you'd like to see.
We'll be back with more 18th century carpentry technology in a moment, so stick around. Molding planes. Now, are these antique?
These are replicas of antiques that we own. Our master toolmaker, George Wilson, made these for us for this project. And that's about the biggest molding plane I think you'll ever see.
It's a beautiful profile, and of course this is for demonstration on such a big chunk of wood.
That was the first try. Yes.
Normally you would be working on a 1-inch board.
Yes.
Now, how do you use a tool like this?
Well, like with any molding plane, you want to start up near the front, make a first pass, and then step it back a little bit. These planes are designed to be foolproof.
Yeah, you've got a fence on the outside of it,
And it will stop cutting when it reaches the bottom.
and you got enough weight to the actual block of wood that,
So the trouble is you're pushing a pretty big shaving.
yeah, you are. Oh, that smells
Often
so
they're
good.
equipped with a peg that lets you attach a tow rope to the plane. Get other people in the shop to pull you.
There's a
while
lot
you
to
work.
see and do here at Colonial Williamsburg. Garland, thanks a lot for your time.
My pleasure.
I love smelling this stuff, but we're running out of time. Come home again next time. We're going to be putting finishing touches on the exterior of the governor's mansion, and we'll be touring the Virginia Capitol building, which was designed by Thomas Jefferson. So then, I'm Bob Vila. It's great to have you home again. For lots of information and resources for your home improvement project, check out my website at bobvila.com.